Hey folks, Justin here, cartoonsmart.com, and hopefully you're watching me through the new Cartoon Smart app. I actually had this idea the other day to just maybe do a series of videos where we prototype out some games. And no sooner did I have that idea did somebody ask me about Risk. Oh, jeez. First off, I hate the game Risk, but don't hold that against me. Any game that goes on too long, I don't know. I kind of lose patience, especially if it's a long game where I'm potentially not winning. I don't even know if that's really the matter. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. Anyway, hopefully you guys know the game. I'm just gonna sketch out a little map over here, but this is Europe's gonna be horrible. Watch. Let's see. All right, so this is something like this stuff. Blah blah blah. That. All right, now. So yeah. Anyway, I somebody asked me if where would you start with a game like this, and what I said was, and I didn't mean to start sarcastically at all, is play the game, play it with programming it in mind. Right, these are islands, and try your best to kind of think like a programmer, and then that's why I'm kind of coming on here with the idea of prototyping this a little bit because if you're just starting off programming, you don't really have a sense for what that means exactly. So if you, I don't even really fully remember the rules of Risk, but I did just Google it and look it up. So basically, you got your continents over here, and you're trying to occupy. For example, this is one territory right here. So I'll shade that in a little bit, and you want to occupy them all eventually, but so the question is how are you going to break this up, and one natural way of doing this is to literally just have separate artwork for particular territories. So let's for example, this would be its own graphic. Okay, so you're going to import that in as a PNG file with the alpha transparency around this. Okay, and the benefit of doing that would be uh, you could do some hit testing, right? Or basically physics collision testing, which you wouldn't think, hey, wait, this is a board game. Why are we getting into physics and stuff like that? But in terms of, let's say you're going to have somebody be able to, move a piece around. This is really not what the pieces look like, but let's just pretend it looks kind of like a pawn, right? Shaded in. So their finger can move this thing around, right? Touch it, put it places. In which case, this could have a very simple physics body as well. And in this case, I probably wouldn't make the physics body be the entire piece of artwork. I would just make the physics part just be right down here. Just something like that, right? So essentially, what we would end up testing when people move pieces around the board is, okay, did this part right here collide with the the physics body of this flat piece of artwork? And by that I mean you're not counting in the alpha that doesn't exist, or basically the negative alpha channel here, only testing to see if this little thing has fallen within here, right? In which case then you can do actions that spiral down from, oh, okay, this guy moved a piece into this particular area. You could do that, and obviously it'd feel a little bit more board game-ish, at that point, if people are able to actually move pieces around, move them like it was a physical game. Another thing you could do is just basically have something off to the side which says, okay, you tap this, right? That's some sort of piece. So you activate it, and then the next time you tap over here, in this area, it that in itself is all it takes to basically just say, okay, all right, you're putting it in that particular territory. What I would do though is I would make each one of these territories a class. Okay, all right, and which means that they're going to have particular properties to them. One obvious one would be basically who's occupying it, or what player's piece is essentially, and that of course just kind of comes down to a matter of numbers equaling how much. If this is a game where you know that there's only going to be a certain number of players, you could do things like, you know, how many, I can't even remember if Risk lets you occupy more than one. Yeah, more than one person can be in there, right? Maybe not. So in which case, I mean, either way, basically it comes down to a matter of variables. So, you know, who occupies, right? Is it, and that could just be a simple number. Is it player one? Is it player two? Is it player three? And then, like, you know, how much of their army is in there? Things like that. And then you just kind of, you know, you just go from there in terms of figuring out, okay, you know, what else is going to be useful in this particular class. Board games, I think, really are one of the hardest things game-wise to begin programming, because we have to have the flexibility to have lots of multiple players. And let's just assume this is going to be a pass and play type game. So, you know, you take your iPad and give it to the next guy when it's their turn, right? So yeah, you got to have the flexibility to have, you know, between 2 and 5 players, and the whole time it's really going to be a loop. And I talk a lot about this. I did teach that board game tutorial series, and that was mostly just about cards. I think I wanted it to be a lot more than that, but after, I don't know how many hours it was of teaching it, it kind of wore me down a little bit. But there's a lot of good information in there. It's a loop, and you got to make it, you know, flexible enough to accommodate more than one person, or as many as you want to have in there. So, you know, at different times you're basically you know, just doing lots of different things. So your loop looks something like the same way you would define it. Well, I'm looking at the Ultra Board Games website here. You know, they basically lay out the sequence of events. You know, so, you know, first thing is going to be whatever, move, or I'm not sure that is the first thing, but, you know, on down 2, 3, 4, you know, finally the last thing is, right, draw a card. So, you know, code wise, you're going to have to basically track which each, you know, at what point are you in the sequence over here. You know, I just did a recent video tutorial about enum states, but that's something I would do, you know, just basically, you know, like current state of the game is move, you know, next state of the game is what, you know, draw a card and whatever. And none of that would really be specific to the actual, to actually who is playing, right? So I don't think I would ever do a variable that's like a player one, right? I would not do this, player one mode equals, you know, whatever. No, I wouldn't do that. It would just be something like, you know, mode equals move, and then, you know, do whatever subtesting within that for whose turn it was. So obviously, yeah, you'd have a variable that's like, you know, whose turn. You know, that's going to equal 1 for player 1. Let's see. You got, you know, cards. That's obviously, you know, I'd have a class for the cards. So card class. And most likely just an array of, for each player. And I would do that actually, obviously specific for each player, that you're basically just, the array would have identifiers for what each card is that each player is holding. And then, you know, when it becomes that person's turn, you basically just kind of, you know, let's suppose you're showing the cards down here, right? This would be something that you would just kind of clear out GUI wise between each player, you know. So, you know, circle, whatever, each one would be. So basically, this thing would get wiped out every time and then replaced with whoever's cards it was. And you're just going to go through the array of each player's cards and, you know, recreate each one of these each time down here. And of course, your card class would hold on to, okay, well, if it's a type of, I don't know, infantry card, whatever, then you do something different for that. So for example, the infantry card is going to have different artwork, right? So your card class is going to have things like, you know, going to do things based on, you know, the art, you know, values of, you know, whatever it does, and so on. And then, you know, that, then you got to decide too, is this going to be something again where we actually use the finger, finger to kind of move it into certain places to initiate that you're going to use it? Do you just basically tap it? And, you know, that's something that everyone's going to have to kind of figure out on their own based on whatever their game is. You know, does it play better if you're just kind of tapping things or actually trying to move them around like they are actually a physical thing? And that's a tough decision. I think some of it comes down to how well you can program, and some of it comes down to whether or not that actually is the best thing to do for the particular game. And let's see, so attacking, this is obviously another big one. Let me kind of shrink all this down over here. I would probably, in my 2-minute reminder of how Risk is played, I would probably do something like this down here for the dice. So you've got kind of these slots down here, and I believe the most I remember reading just now was 5 for each, for whoever you're attacking. You could have as many as 5 dice. And, so you would basically, have something that just prompts people like roll, tap to roll. And then each one of these is going to get generated, and so on for when there's an attack going on. And from what it said on the the webpage, both people roll at once, which kind of makes things a little bit easier, because then you could sort of have, essentially you could have one person initiate the, 2 people don't have to pass back and forth to initiate a roll. So you just, check roll. Both people would end up rolling, and then you could just kind of do something where you highlight, maybe, because it says that you basically take the 2 highest dice at that point, right? So let's suppose this one's 3, so then you have something that kind of highlights bing, bing, and then, maybe they shoot off and do something or other. Somebody's piece over there visibly dies or whatever. And again, everything is kind of in this circular loop. So it's a lot of I think it's a lot of doing things kind of on delays, performing functions, after X amount of time, and some of it you're going to have to basically kind of keep track of, when the player can interact and when the game is just kind of doing its own thing, right? So that in itself would be sort of a variable too. Is interaction allowed? Because you don't want someone to, for example, start playing around with a piece over here if really the game state is, that we're rolling things. And let's see, what else do we got here? Earning cards. Well, we kind of already talked about that. Maybe, and what it is, your turn to draw a card, right? Maybe you have a card stack over here that they have to, tap to draw, or maybe when it's that point of the turn, you just automatically make a card go into their hand. They gotta kind of visibly flip up for a second to show them what they have, and then go back down there. And if it is the last thing that they're doing on the turn, that I think that's probably okay too. One of the things I did talk about that in the card games tutorial series is when to let if it is the end of your turn, to basically give people a little bit of time to kind of process what has happened. Okay, so if it is going to be a pass and play game, you tap something that says passing or whatever, turnover, go to send it to the next player or whatever. And if it's going to be something where these cards are secret, you definitely got to make some sort of kind of verification that, okay, my turn over, press a button, and then when you pass, next player has to basically verify that, hey, okay, start my turn, right? At which point you reveal things like these cards, okay? So you would know automatically if the person before you was cheating, because if if they pass you the iPad or whatever and these are already showing, then you know that they kind of jumped the gun a little bit, looked at your stuff. And I'm about done here. Let's see, placing new armies, continents, gameplay. This loop right here, this guy, there's things that are player initiated, whatever, stuff like that, and then you get into the actual logic of the game, and this is something that I think would happen. Well, it's going to happen all throughout here, really, but you have kind of pre-game, pre-turn, and post-turn logic, where for example, at some point this is going to go, hey, you know what? Does one player have everything? Have they conquered the world yet? And obviously that's really kind of just a matter of you have a variable that says P1 player 1 world count, I don't know, or territories occupied, something like that. And if that equals, if you've only got 42 or something possible, if it equals that, then, well, player 1 has won the game, right? So yeah, that's my quick take on Risk. I don't think it, well, let's put it this way. I think it is a risky game to begin programming with, but if you're feeling confident that you can kind of work your way through it and take it one step at a time, I think that's probably okay. I would say you might be better off, to my specific person that asked, you might be better off starting with another game, just to, I don't know, maybe just a simple card game. But even that, as I found out, is well, I tell you what's not simple, is making it, what I did with that card games tutorial series, is I tried to make it so that you could easily make any card game using properties, right? So it wasn't just like we were programming blackjack or something, because then a game like that is really simple. You go, hey, there's only going to be two possible turns, and on one turn you draw a card or you don't, whatever it is. So my whole aim with that card game series was that you can essentially develop any sort of card game. You can specify however many of these things you want to do, make the players do, essentially turn actions, right? But I don't know. Part of me goes, yeah, just do it. Just try to make the game. The other part of me goes, no. Just take her easy. Make a dice game first. So anyway, by the way, here's how your dice game goes. These are random. And don't try to do 3D dice. Just have a little timer that goes bing, 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 and shows you one at a time what you've rolled. All right, that's going to do it for this. Hey, wow, I talked for a long time. For this prototyping lesson.